Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, joined today for the match day by Laura Bradburn. We're sitting at half-time at Almonvale. The Tony Macaroni were a goal up, Laura. What do you make of that first half? We were talking about some of the concerns around the park and some of the players who had been selected for the starting lineup. Didn't quite go to plan, did it? Because Kyogo scores within 9 minutes.
Yeah, I mean that's the downside of doing this, isn't it? You put your opinions out there, and fate can conspire to make you look a bit of an idiot, which it did. Having said that, it did kind of confirm one thing that we were talking about, in the sense that if we play our game, then it doesn't matter about the physicality of the other team, because if you see from exactly how Kyogo's movement and all that contributed to the goal, the Obalai, I think, has been tasked with being the physical enforcer that would stop Kyogo, and that's all very well and good if you can get near him, but if you can't get near him, then your physical disparity means absolutely nothing, and that's exactly what happened. They found space, and he was able to finish, which meant, any tactic that David Martindale had put in place to kind of nullify him was pretty much pointless.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you made that point during the game there, Laura, about the fact that when you've got that talent, it doesn't really matter, does it? The physicality goes out the window. It was a point that we were talking about before the game. There was a lot of Celtic fans and commenters on Acsom disappointed that Giakoumakis didn't get a start today, but, wee Kyogo pops up with an outstanding finish, it's got to be said. And I was really, really impressed with the build-up play, because Ralston played a magnificent crossfield pass to that man Taylor. And I'm going to check his assists before the end of the game, because he has set up so many goals in his 100 games for Celtic, Laura. Often we don't probably give him the credit he deserves on the show for that aspect of his game. But it was a fantastic wee ball through to Kyogo. And what a finish. What a finish by Kyogo as well. I think James has mentioned to us as well, this time last year people were going on about Kyogo being the most naturally talented player we've had, the best individual talent that we'd had since Larsson, and in the last couple of weeks he's been getting written off. It just shows you how things go and swing from side to side. I think Kyogo's not been at his best, but when you look at his stats as well, games, goals ratio, it's not as though he's gone a dozen games without a goal, Laura. He has contributed, and I think Ange's done really well here by continually playing him, because he had a brilliant chance the other night, one-on-one, the wee pass through from Giakoumakis. He should score that, and you think, if he get dropped today, that could really harm his confidence. And just continue to pick him, he scores the goal. Wonderful man management. But let's talk about the assist by Taylor and the secondary assist by Ralston. Fantastic play by the two inverted fullbacks.
Yeah, I mean, I still think that's one aspect of the game that so many teams domestically anyway have not managed to nullify. We all have been concerned over the past few weeks. Is Ange's system so predictable now that people are starting to catch it out? And I think in terms of stopping our tempo, stopping these quick throw-ins and free kicks and things like that, that's been so well publicised that teams would almost be negligent if they weren't trying to put methods in place to stop that. But the inverted wing-backs is a system that no other team in Scotland is using. Probably they're finding it hard to train in order to cope with it if the managers and coaches concerned aren't familiar with the system themselves. So it's a situation where we're still getting a lot of joy out of what Ralston and Taylor, or Juranovic and Taylor, can bring us in that sense, because the inverted fullbacks give us space in the middle of the park that these other teams don't know how to deal with, because they're too busy. If they're the defenders or the midfield picking up the opposition's midfield and strikers, they don't expect to having to be closing down the fullbacks except in the wide areas, and they're not sure how to deal with it when it's a bit narrower than that.
Yeah, absolutely. It has been one of these things, I think, when Ange came in. Certain managers come in with philosophies and ideas of how they should set up. And I remember the formation being a massive discussion point. I remember when John Barnes came to the club and he was talking about this forward-thinking shape that he was going to take. It didn't quite work out. Ange comes in with inverted fullbacks, and the players that he has deployed in these positions have taken to those positions so well. And I think you saw it there in the lead up to the goal that broken the deadlock today. I'm really keen to bring in some comments, Laura, because it was very remiss of me in the first broadcast earlier on today that I didn't get enough of you guys in. So thanks everybody for getting involved. There's about 700 watching across the various platforms. Autumn Glow. These plastic pitches should be banned for good. My personal highlight of the first half, the Moy tackle on Column. Right, the first part of that, Laura, I'm going to struggle to find anybody who's going to disagree with Autumn Glow. We speak about it every time we play. Against a team with a plastic pitch, they should be absolutely outlawed. I think both Ange and Said Haksabanovic was asked the question prior to the game, and they both, they know it's a necessary evil. They both have experience of playing on plastic pitches, but football should be played on grass. And it's one of these things, I think, that, in terms of an advantage, one of the things Haksabanovic said was, both teams are playing on that park. Obviously, Livingston are more used to playing there. It's their own backyard. Ange spoke about in the week leading up to games like this, they use the artificial surface up at Lennoxtown just to kind of acclimatise. We know the kind of the good points and the bad points. The good points, I think, from a football club's perspective, is it was basically cost effective. But hasn't that now been proven to be something of a false economy with regards to the money that they thought they would generate or save with a groundsman?
I mean, I think it is because, to my knowledge, they still require upkeep, and their installation is certainly more expensive than a grass pitch. So you wonder if the economics really checks out. I do think they maybe still have a case in terms of the economics of being able to use it out with just football matches. It's a very robust surface, obviously, that they can hire out the stadium for events during the week and in the summer and things like that. And so there's that financial aspect of things to bring into it. But one thing that I thought was interesting about what Ange said about it that I thought was different to the sort of tack that most people take is a lot of people talk about the obvious injuries that can be caused by it because it is such a solid surface, and that is a concern in and of itself. But Ange was talking more about the sporting integrity of the game and the fact that it really does fundamentally change the way the game is played.
Yeah.
The ball bounces differently, it rolls on the ground differently. I don't even think it necessarily gives the home teams an advantage all the time because they are having to go and play on grass pitches as well. But what it does do, and what Ange was saying, I think, was it just fundamentally changes what the game looks like. And I think I'm in agreement with him that the game is much more natural and much more enjoyable to me played on a grass pitch. And I think that's a point that the injuries is an obvious point that should come first and foremost, the safety and health of the players. But beyond that, the actual enjoyment of the game suffers. And I think that's something that's an important point to make as well.
It is, and who else to make it but Ange Postecoglou, who talks about his own kind of philosophy, the football utopia, right? So if you're a fan watching that game, obviously the enjoyment of it may not be as good as, had the game been played on the grass pitch. But also, when you think about the broadcasting and how big a part that plays in football across Europe and further afield, Laura, it doesn't look great, does it? As a spectacle, it doesn't look great.
And the other excuse that they used to give about it was that it was more weather resistant in terms of for snow and wet and stuff like that. Livingston and Hamilton have both had games called off with their pitches, so it's not really an argument either.
No. So I think we're all in agreement. Yeah, get rid of them. Ridiculizer, nice composure and lovely finish from Kyogo. Absolutely. You sometimes see players, particularly up top, where if they've not scored for a few games, Laura, the composure goes, the confidence goes. But, there was none of that. It was very instinctive by Kyogo. I thought it was a fantastic team goal as well. Scott Mason, another team parking the bus when we get near is hellish, and on a plastic park, the speed the ball travels at makes it a nightmare for attacking teams to play good football. Well, there's a few parts of that there. I think.
Can I just jump in on that?
Sure.
It is frustrating to play against, but I always make this point. I don't think any team is obliged to play in any sort of way other than the way they think will get them the points. I don't blame Livingston for parking the bus. That's how they think they're going to get the best result for their team. They're not obliged to come out and play scintillating, entertaining football and let themselves get ripped to bits just for entertainment's sake. But it is frustrating from a Celtic supporter's point of view that we can't play our full-flown game because of the tactics that they're employing. But that's the whole point of the game to me.
I get that, and it's one of the ones, Laura, where we've got to find a way. And I think we get that, and I think Ange gets it. You know, you're going to come up against this side here who every margin of advantage that they can possibly squeeze out of a game, they will. I mean, we go to away grounds and they deliberately let the grass grow a wee bit longer. You remember Brendan Rodgers used to bring that up at Tynecastle. We go to plastic pitches, you know, there's an argument to say that that makes the game difficult for us to play our own natural game, which is fast-flowing, entertaining football. Well, we've just got to come up against the chat. It's just a different challenge. I think that's the way Ange looks at it. But again, with these teams, you know, where their margins could be the difference between relegation and staying in the league, I think that parking the bus, like you say, it's their right, and we just need to find a way. Thankfully, in that first half, we have found a way. At least Livingston as a football club are giving Celtic 3 stands. A lot of the other clubs, you know, cut their nose off to spite their face in that respect. And I know the argument's for and against because Alan Borrows got involved with our very own JP Mason in a Twitter discussion a wee while back talking about the thinking behind teams like Motherwell not giving us the tickets. Livingston have given us the tickets. We have scored the only goal in the game. I'm going to look in that second half at Taylor's assist record because it must be up there. It must be up there in terms of assists per game. But there is a bit of battle going on the park, and it's resulted in Carter Vickers getting a booking. I think it's you know, Newbley, as unfashionable a player as he might be, you know, he's given the big man a fair old tussle in there, and I think Carter Vickers has done well, but it's quite clear that that's a decent head-to-head to keep your eye on in the second half.
Yeah, it is, and as reticent as I am, I think Willie Collum, you know, plenty of examples we could bring up where he's not handled the game properly. I think today he's tried to employ what as close to a common sense approach as you could to most things. I don't disagree with the booking against Carter Vickers as long as a similar situation with a Leicester player, that's a comment I was reading, a Livingston player, results in a booking as well. I don't think Carter Vickers can argue about it, but it just shows you, like you say, what the Livingston striker is doing to give him a run for his money. But I think as well, he's having to do that because of the lack of service he's getting. So, you know, I'm all well and good for a Livingston striker giving Carter Vickers a physical battle to fight against, as long as it means that he's too preoccupied doing that to be looking for the ball.
No, you're right. And again, fair play. I think Colum's done all right as well. As much as it pains me to say that at halftime, it doesn't happen very often on Acsom, it's got to be said. Talking about the referee in good terms. Craig M, we're playing quite well, but we need to get another goal. There is a sense of that. We've seen it so many times in Livingston. You know, where the bounce of that ball, like we've spoken about, might take out one of our centre halves, and then one of their big centre forwards might get on the end of it. Yeah,
it's one thing about our play that I kind of worries me a little bit is we're so used to having to press and press and press and make chances and score goals that sometimes, and I don't know why today's different to a 6-1 against Hibs or something like that, but it was almost as if that first goal just took the sting out of it and completely killed the game. I'm hoping Ange gets them fired up for the second half and says, no, ram it home and get this done.
Do you think there'll be any changes? There's a few coming through here. Pinpointing Hatate as having quite a quiet first half. I can't see any changes at half time though, Laura, to be fair. I think we'll go for the second goal in the first 10-15 and do his usual 65-minute triple change perhaps. Haksabanovic, a player we spoke about before the game, he's getting loads of the ball, but he's not really created much chances, Laura, has he?
He's not. I think what's clear is a lot of the play is being directed down that left-hand side, so they obviously think that he can have that impact. But the problem when you do that is if that player on that side happens to be a bit off the boil on a given day, it all falls flat. So hopefully in the second half they recognise that and maybe try and put more of the play down the right-hand side through Forrest and see if they can get any more joy that way.
For sure. There's one thing, we've got options on the bench. We've got Jota, we've got Abada. These players, I think that if we need to get a wee bit of an injection, then they can bring that. One final comment before we go back to the action. Magnet 67, as the Clash song goes, Complete Control. If you're going to mention music, there is a chance that I'll bring your comment up. However, at 1-0 and with their big battering ram up front, we are susceptible to an error. Needs a second. I totally agree with that. Hopefully we'll get it in the first 10-15 minutes of the second half. Let's go and rejoin the action. Thanks everybody for getting involved, and thank you, Laura Bradburn, once again for joining me on a Celtic